the council meeting for Monday, October 15th. And roll call, all councilors are present. An agenda review, we will have an amendment of an order 18164 coming up later. And I need to take a motion to add 18168 to the agenda.
So moved.
All right. All those in favor? All right, passes unanimously. It is added on. We'll deal with that at the end of new business. Moving on to approval of minutes of September 10th, 2018 council meeting and September 24th, 2018 special council meeting. Take a motion, please.
Move approval.
All right. Does anyone have any changes, comments regarding the minutes? Another fine job by Nance. All right. I will take a vote. All those in favor of the minutes? All right. Passes unanimously. Moving on to public hearings. Public hearing A, to consider a vitulers license for Bell's IGA 6 Stillwater Avenue.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Dave Milan, the Director of Community Development, and I'm here to let you know that the inspections have been completed for this application and the staff recommends approval.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone wish to speak for or against the issuing of this license? Hearing none, I will close public hearing A, move on to public hearing B, to consider a vitulers license for Max Convenience Stores LLC doing business as Circle K, number 7089, 53 Main Street. Dave?
Again, inspections have all been completed and staff recommends approval.
Okay. Anyone for or against the issuing of this license? Hearing none, close public hearing B, move on to public hearing C, to consider a vitulers license for Max Convenience Stores LLC doing business as Circle K, number 7021, 2 Stillwater Avenue. Caught me there, I almost.
All the inspections have been completed and staff recommends approval.
Great. Anyone wish to speak for or against the issuing of this license? Hearing none, I will close public hearing C, move on to public hearing D, to consider a vitulers license for Brewers of the North doing business as Aroma Joe's, 99 Park Street.
Just to make things more exciting, staff recommends approval because all of the inspections have been completed.
Great. Does anyone wish to speak for or against the issuing of this license? No. I will close public hearing D. Public hearing E, to consider a Class 1 malt, spirituous, and vinous liquor license and vitulers license for S&M Corporation doing business as Thai Orchid, 28 Mill Street. How about this one?
All inspections have been completed and staff recommends approval.
All right. Does anyone wish to speak for or against the issuing of this license? None. I'll close public hearing E. Move on to public hearing F. To consider a Class 1 malt, spirituous, and vinous liquor license, special amusement permit for music, dancing, and entertainment, and vitulers license to the University of Maine doing business as Collins Center for the Arts, 5746 Collins Center. How about this one?
Staff recommends approval of the license. All inspections have been completed.
Anyone wish to speak for or against the issuing of this license? Hearing none, I will call public hearing F. Public hearing G, to consider Maine Municipal Association Model General Assistance Ordinance Appendices A through D for the period of October 1, 2018 to September 30th, 2019, as required by Title 22 MRSA Section 43054. There's nobody there.
That would be me. As councilors may recall, each municipality within the state of Maine is required to have a local welfare program. General assistance is that program. If we follow the model ordinance, which the town has adopted, and we actually do what we are supposed to within that ordinance, we can get up to 70% of the expenses for the general assistance program reimbursed by the state. Part of what we have to do each year is to adopt the appendices at the back, which are the maximums, so this is what is allowed. And council, of course, doesn't have to, but if you don't, we would be in a position of likely not getting reimbursement if we went above the maximums. So I would just want to remind folks that general assistance is not designed to be a program that keeps people at a livable income. It is a 30-day stopgap to get people to state and federal programs to better meet their needs. So this is not designed to be somebody's income. I reviewed the, so we are given by Maine Municipal Association each year the model appendices, which is what you got in your background packet. Those numbers are numbers that are calculated by MMA and DHS together and distributed to all 491 towns. When I reviewed the maximums that are suggested for this year, these are very modest increases. Talking with our general assistance administrator, who is not me, she is seeing that these are adequate to meet the intent of the program and the needs that she is seeing coming through the door. So, with that, I guess I would ask if anybody has any questions.
So in the notes, it said that if we thought that they were not adequate, then we can request, or we can do some kind of study.
So that's only for housing. Housing, there is an allowance within the housing that if you do a survey, and it's not a simple survey, there is a process you need to follow to demonstrate to the Department of Human Services that the need for housing allowance is greater in our community, then they could review that. If they accepted it, we could use a different housing number. At this point, that would be something, if council wanted to do, that we would want to put in place for next year. It is timely. It is a time. It takes time to do that process and money.
I thank you for that. I mention it because it's apparently the cost of housing, lower income housing, compared to what people earn in Bangor is now considered higher than in Portland. So that was just a report that just came out. And so we're in the greater Bangor area, and the statement was that Bangor did not have significant housing at the low end for people who were working. And so since the article I read was all about this report for Bangor, and then when I read to prepare for this meeting, it seemed that this is something we should be thinking about because we are in the greater Bangor area. And so since it's probably not used that often, and it's only for a month, I'm not protesting that we would just approve this, but I think we should be considering that in the future, the amounts might be higher than what the state is considering for our city or our town.
Well, and the state usually reevaluates these numbers as well, too.
So,
Sophie, what would be a significant deviation, like monetarily, financially? It says if there was a significant deviation from the maximum, so in dollars, what would that look like, do you think? The maximums provided are consistent with rents, but if there was a significant deviation from the maximums provided by DHS, what would be the significant deviation?
probably $100 a month,
Would be significant, you think?
I think, for them. My issue in listening to this is the general assistance applications that I have seen, and when I talk to landlords
Yeah.
for a single individual in an apartment in Orono, so many are rented by bedroom, and $500 to $550 seems to be a reasonable bedroom charge, so a month with utilities. So I guess I am, when I look at this, I don't see applications coming through requesting more than what is here. But I think if you look at it, if we could show that it was 858, you know, in that range instead of 730. Oh wait, I'm looking at overall maximum, sorry, wrong page. Let me go up. So, here we go. When I look at the fact that $628 a month is what's allowed for a heated apartment, it seems like it's within what we're seeing on general assistance applications for requests are within that. But I think if we saw a swing, if we did a full survey and could show that really, and the cheapest that you could rent an apartment in Orono was $740 to $50 a month, that would be significant, I think, enough as deviation.
So the chair mentioned that the state keeps track of this and is evaluating it every year, and you are the person or whoever's managing it as your staff is also seeing these requests, and the requests are for what the person who's requesting actually needs to pay for that month. And so your experience is that it hasn't been higher than what the state has given us each month? Or is it the state is allowed?
There are people who don't qualify for general assistance, for sure. We have denials. What I'm not getting in my office is we have somebody who should otherwise qualify, but I can't write a check for enough to cover their rent, which that would be something that would come to my office, because I can make a decision to deviate and simply not ask for reimbursement of the additional if there is a bona fide need that they can demonstrate.
Anyone else? All right, I will close public hearing G, excuse me, and move on to acknowledgements by council members. Start with Cheryl.
I just want to say that the fall gardens now look really nice. I had a friend come from out of town who thought that Orono was just gorgeous with the corn stalks and the ribbons, and the gardens are still really pretty this time of year. So I'd like to acknowledge those people.
Megan.
I would like to encourage everybody to vote. I regularly come into contact with young adults in my professional life, and recently I've been asking them, are you registered to vote? You registered to vote? No, I don't know. I don't know enough about the issues, and I don't know. There are many resources, nonpartisan resources online where you can read about them. The League of Women Voters has a great one for the Maine ballot. I've shared it on my council Facebook page if you want to take a look. You can come to the town office at your convenience and vote up until it's November 1st, right? I believe. No, to do your absentee ballot. Yep. And you can register to vote up into including Election Day at the polls, yes, in the state of Maine. So there, you've got plenty of time to get educated and make sure that you get your ballot in, whether it's by absentee ballot at the town office or coming to the field house at UMaine on Election Day. So I hope to see you. I will be working the polls, and I hope to see you all there.
Tom?
Wow. So that shot all the ones I was interested in saying. Yeah. And I also, take a few minutes, not while you're driving, and just take a look at the colors this year. They are spectacular. And it's well worth just taking a walk. Of course, not tonight.
Tom?
I'd just like to build on Cheryl's acknowledgement a little bit. I'd like to have a letter from the council go to Christine Manila and Gail White, who co-chair the beautification committee. They have a number of other volunteers that work with them, but I think sending a acknowledgement to the co-chairs would be a nice thing for us to do. They put in a tremendous amount of time, and it really shows.
Great idea.
And perhaps Cindy could sign it on our behalf.
Be more than happy to. Lori?
I represented the town of Orno, as did two other counselors, Counselor Perry and Cheryl Robinson, at the Maine Municipal Association Conference on October 3rd. It was very nice to be part of the Maine Municipal Association's education and information session. I went to a session on pedestrian safety, and I thought that I was impressed to hear all of the ways that Orno is taking advantage of the things that are available at the state level for addressing pedestrian safety. Also, I attended the Grow Smart Maine Power of Localism Conference that was in Bangor last week, and I would be happy to talk with anyone about the discussions that were great sessions. The most interesting to me, I thought, was about Neighborly, the person who started Neighborly, which is a way to modernize municipal bond market to allow local people to invest in their own community. And we were in the Finance Committee meeting on Wednesday talking about bonds, and so it was very interesting to see that someone has come up with a way to try to get so that you could go to your local town and invest in your own town. And that's it.
Sam?
Yeah, a few things. Just to echo Megan, November 6th, vote, please. Also, I really want to acknowledge the work that Shelley Crosby downstairs is doing, putting this together. Every year we have an election. The work is, the work going into this is just enormous, and it is always so smooth. So hats off to her a couple weeks early. I'm sure she's going to do a great job, and she's cooking right along. Speaking of Shelley, I saw her today when I came in downstairs to get my dog registered for next year, which is available as of today. So I'm proud to say Shasta is the first dog in Orono to be registered in 2019. I know, always looking for that glory, right?
She'll get a special ribbon.
That's right. That's right. It's the dogs and kids. Halloween is coming up. Trunk or Treat is happening again downtown. I'd like to invite everybody there. Make sure they're aware. That's through Parks and Recs, the library, and community development. Great programming happening at the library as well, in conjunction with the a lot of the fraternities and sororities. But no, they're not doing that this year. Well, never mind. I retract that comment. I thought they did some work with the library, but anyway. And the last thing, I'd like to acknowledge Orno Brewing Company's close to opening their new facility on Margin Street, which looks fantastic. So many great businesses here, and we're about to have a new venue open. It's really, really exciting as we see Orno still thrive. Thank you.
Hi, Sam. Just to help you out, the Greek Life is indeed doing the Halloween event with the library, except that they will be in the alley downtown, so that all of the activity will be downtown, not one at the library and one on Mill Street. So you did have it mostly right.
Thank you, Belle.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I'm not crazy, Tom.
Thank you very much, councilors. We'll move on to unfinished business. We don't have any. Next item is the consent agenda. I will take a motion for the consent agenda.
Second.
All right. Would like to just point out that our next regular council meeting is going to be on November 19th due to the holiday, and not the November 12th. All right. I will take a vote. All those in favor of the consent agenda? Passes unanimously. Moving on to new business, there is an amendment to Order 18164, and I will read it as the numbers have been amended. That work? So, order authorizing the town manager to carry forward into the FY 2019 municipal budgets the following FY 2018 funds up to a total of $515,023, budgeted for projects or expenditures that were not completed by the close of fiscal year June 30, 2018. in the following departments: Town Manager, $8,450, Assessing, $35,000, Planning, $13,458, Police, $13,000, Fire, $3,500, Parks and Rec, $15,835, Public Works, $23,000, Facilities, $5,150, Capital Equipment, $26,200, Capital Infrastructure, $367,930, and miscellaneous, $3,500. I'll take a motion, please.
Move approval.
Second.
Sophie?
We discussed this in the Finance Committee at some length, but a carry-forward fund are funds that were budgeted in the previous year that had projects or expenses identified but not yet expended. The bulk of this is in capital infrastructure. If you think about it, the fiscal year ends right in the middle of construction season. So these funds are projects that have been approved and are underway but had not yet been completed. I don't know what other information. Tom, can you help me out here?
Maybe just a comment on the difference between the capital infrastructure figure on our printed
Sure.
page and the new
Sure.
amount.
So when this went to Finance Committee, I was asking them to carry forward $110,000 for the work that was done on Mill Street. This is a general fund carry forward. The Mill Street project was funded out of the Downtown and Transit-Oriented TIF district, so I removed that from the final list. So that's why you're $110,000 less than was presented at the Finance and Operations Committee.
I just add that at the Finance Committee meeting, we went through every item and the specific reason there was a carry forward in each line, and they all seem to be very reasonable carry forwards.
Does anyone else have any questions, comments? All right, hearing none, I will take a vote on Order 18164. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Order 18165, order adopting a 6-month moratorium ordinance extension on retail marijuana establishments and retail marijuana social clubs. I'll take a motion, please.
Second.
All right, Kyle.
Hi, I'm Kyle Drexler, Town Planner. So, as you know, there's currently a moratorium on retail marijuana establishments and social clubs, although social clubs are no longer part of it. It's just been an ongoing thing, and over the past 6 months, staff has attended different workshops and done research on best practices in other communities to kind of learn locally in Maine what different municipalities are starting to do based on the new law, and across the country to see what other communities that have more experience working with these sorts of establishments have been doing over the past few years. So with that in mind, staff has presented to council in different committees various information on public health and land use aspects of these establishments, and mainly retail marijuana stores, in an effort to just provide as much information as possible to guide the decision for Orono going forward. So extending the moratorium would allow for continued discussion between staff and council to determine what exactly, whether or not Orono will opt in or not, and then from there, what the specific standards for adult use marijuana establishments will be. So,
Anyone have any questions or comments?
No.
My only comment would be, it would be our expectation that we would be dealing with this item before the end of the 6-month moratorium.
So We, I think, have gotten to the point where council has the information it needs to have the next step be Kyle working on some options so that you can begin to tell us which roads you want to go
Good.
down, and then we'll start looking at draft ordinance language.
Thank you.
Kyle, do we feel comfortable the state is done moving these targets or
Changing. I mean, for the adult use, there hasn't been any
changes?
news or updates in a while, so it seems like this is fairly set in stone now. I think.
Great, thank you. Anyone else have any questions or comments?
I have one. Is there any place in Maine where that is really starting to adopt some of these?
Well, Bangor has some in their town code. They have a marijuana section for
Medicinal?
retail and medical marijuana. It's kind of split into two.
Is it just Bangor that you know of right now? I'm just curious
haven't
how it's moving or spreading around.
I haven't
Maine.
looked at too many others in Maine.
Yeah.
I imagine that some are, though, starting to put it together. Even in Bangor's, though, it's very basic and simple. It's a really short document. It's probably not as expansive as it will eventually be.
Right.
But yeah, certainly
Okay.
something I will keep an eye on as I bring it to council in the
Sure.
future.
Thanks.
Great.
I think it's fair just to acknowledge that we're getting a lot of our information from Maine Municipal Association, who is keeping an eye on what's happening across the state, so.
True.
Anyone else? All right, hearing none, I'll take a vote on Order 18165. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Order 18166, order adopting a 6-month moratorium ordinance regarding medical marijuana retail stores and registered dispensaries. I'll take a motion, please.
Move approval.
Second.
All right. Kyle?
Okay.
anything to add?
So following in line with the last order, as mentioned in the council meeting last month, on July 9th, there were 2 new laws passed in regards to the Medical Marijuana Act in the state. And one of these laws was sweeping reform of the entire statute that will allow for a similar opt-in type policy for municipalities that the adult use marijuana is following. It also brought to light it put the spotlight on medical marijuana retail stores, and it began to gain some interest about people questioning what exactly is allowed and isn't allowed. So when staff looked at the moratorium mentioned in the previous order, it became apparent that it probably wasn't clear enough and didn't clarify well enough that the moratorium was meant to prohibit medical marijuana establishments as well as adult use establishments, and therefore it's recommended that along with the retail marijuana establishments moratorium, there also be a separate moratorium for medical marijuana establishments to coincide with that one, so that the standards can be developed at the same time.
Great. Anyone else have any questions or comments?
I just have a brief comment, just on this item and the previous one for anyone. I'm always thinking about that person at home casually checking in on YouTube. We might seem like we're not asking a lot of questions or talking about it a lot, but this is a sort of a step to formalize a process that's been discussed and ongoing for quite some time, so you can check out previous council meetings if you would like to hear more robust conversation about the marijuana moratoriums.
Yes, Kyle did quite a presentation at the last meeting, so, great. Any other questions or comments? Susan?
Hello, Susan Whitmore. I actually want to comment also about the social element also. I would rather the town of Orono kept that industry out of town. In terms of the social element of marijuana use, I myself have not witnessed responsible or respectful conduct from marijuana users, such as attending concerts at non-smoking venues, and people lighting up marijuana. And that's indoors, both indoors and outdoors, and in front of adolescent children, like little kids. That's not responsible. And pertaining to the medical element of such, there is a question of epileptic children that's recognizable. Yet at the same time, Maine's in the midst of an opioid epidemic, and
Susan,
medical.
I really appreciate your comments, but this is just a moratorium. We haven't gotten to the
Right.
point of whether we're going to opt in or not.
Okay.
So if you could hold your comments to that
All right.
public hearing, we'd appreciate it.
Right. Well, then I will state simply, I'd rather you did not.
Okay,
opt
thank you. All right. We will take a vote on Order 18166, putting the moratorium in place. All those in favor? Passes unanimously, so we'll have plenty more opportunities to discuss this. Moving on to Order 18167, order adopting ordinance amendments to the Town of Orono Ordinances, Chapter 18, Land Use, Section 18-31, Definitions, Section 18-136, Clustered Development, Section 18-144, Wildlife Natural Areas Preservation, Section 18-166, Classification of Projects, Section 18-168, Site Plan Review Application, Section 18-177, Site Plan Review Criteria, Section 18-206, Preliminary Plan for Major Subdivision, Section 18-208, Final Plan for Minor Subdivision, Section 18-210, Standards, and the addition of Section 18-113, Vernal Pools Overlay District to the Land Use Ordinance and the official zoning map to establish the Vernal Pools Overlay District in a portion of the town's designated growth area, and to amend other sections of the Land Use Ordinance for consistency with the provisions of the Vernal Pools Overlay District, and further to authorize the town manager to enter into an agreement with the Orono Land Trust as the third-party conservation organization required by the Maine Vernal Pool Special Area Management Program, VP SAMP, such agreement to conform to the provisions of the VP SAMP, and further to authorize the town manager to submit the Maine Department of Environmental Protection an application for partial delegated authority to issue Natural Resource Protection Act permits for activities affecting vernal pools. Take a motion, please.
So moved.
And second, I
All
think a round of
right.
applause is in order. With those.
You can't add anything to that, can you?
If I can just interrupt and make sure that Evan gets full credit for writing that one.
Thank you, Evan.
I was ordered to. Good evening, Evan Rickert, consulting planner to the town. So this is nearing the culmination of a number of years of effort to come up with an alternative, effective way to regulate and protect vernal pools in Orono and statewide. And we've gone through workshops and public hearings on a number of occasions over the last year. So I think you basically know what this is, what the details of this are. Of course, I'm willing to answer and glad to answer any questions you have, but just in quick summary, this alternative approach has a couple of objectives to enable towns to more effectively and easily direct development into areas with municipal services and close to schools and jobs that might otherwise be affected or stymied by the presence of a vernal pool, and to give vernal pools greater landscape level protection in the town's rural area. This is an approach that's endorsed by both regulators and scientists, wetlands scientists, as something that would improve upon the existing state and federal regulatory framework. In brief, a developer within the designated development area, this is the so-called overlay district that would become part of the zoning map, it's a relatively compact portion of the town where public sewer, public water typically are available. Within this area that we mapped in part of the ordinance, a developer could choose to develop a parcel with a vernal pool on it and compromise or even eliminate that pool if he or she first pays a fee, as described in the ordinance, that would, to the town, that would then be used by a third-party conservation organization to acquire on a willing buyer, willing seller basis, landscape level vernal pool protection in the rural part of the community. Alternatively, this is a voluntary program, so the developer could simply default to the existing vernal pool regulatory rules under the Natural Resources Protection Act and the Clean Water Act at the federal level, in which, under state law, it means conserving areas within 250 feet of the pool. Under Army Corps rules, potentially somewhat greater area. This is an area that most scientists think is inadequate and to really give sustaining protection to those vernal pools in those more urbanized areas. We have gone through a number of steps under the Army Corps of Engineers adopted Special Areas Management Program, which enables towns to adopt this. And by the way, Topsom and Orono have been the two pilot towns working with the regulators and developers and others to develop this approach. There's a number of steps that a municipality has to achieve in order to be able to become eligible to adopt this approach. First, you have to have a state-approved comprehensive plan, which we do. We have to have created the designated development area based on our comprehensive plan and have that approved by the Corps and Inland Fish and Wildlife and DEP, and that is done. We have to have an agreement with a third-party conservation organization, which would be the Orono Land Trust. That agreement is drafted and is ready for signing this week, depending on the action of the council tonight. We have to have the ordinance amendments, of course, adopted, and that's what's before you tonight. And then the last step will be to take all of that material and package it into an application to the Board of Environmental Protection to receive what's called partial designated review authority to issue permits relating to vernal pools in the designated development area. And so that application has been put together except for these final pieces of your order, if you approve this, and the signed agreement with the Orono Land Trust. At that point, once the DEP gives its approval, the ordinance and the map would be officially amended and effective, triggered, they'd be put into effect, and developers in the designated development area would that option would be available. There will be one future step for the council, and that is to adopt what's called the minimum fee as part of your annual permit and licensing fee schedule. That would be one of the alternative forms of fee that a developer opting into this kind of program would have to pay. And we can discuss that at the appropriate time, but it's embodied in the ordinance that minimum fee will be established as part of the annual schedule.
Does anyone have any questions or comments?
What are you going to do after this is all over? This is impressive. It's impressive work.
Yes, thank you.
Evan, how long is the pilot project before others can join?
Oh, anybody can join now. The Special Area Management Plan was adopted in September 2016, and theoretically, any municipality that wanted to begin the work on that at that time could. It's just that Topsom and Orono were very familiar with it and had some head start with the great help of Dr. Aram Calhoun from the University of Maine, who really was the organizer of much of this effort, and Elizabeth Hertz, who's been working with them, with Aram, and So we had a leg up, I suppose you could say. We knew what was expected. I think they are hoping that many towns will opt into this as a possibility. One of the things that has to get done is the vernal pools have to have been preliminarily identified and ground truthed as to their character. And as you'll recall way back, or some of you will recall way back in 2008, 2009, without any knowing that this was going to happen, we worked with Aram to fly the town, get a photo interpretation, and they trained citizen scientists like Dave and Pat Thompson here to go out and do 2 springs of field verification where we had permission from landowners. So a lot of the groundwork was done that allowed us to move ahead in the way that we have. Other towns may not be at that point.
Great. Does anyone else have anything?
So that means if there is someone who is interested in doing a development in Orno, it's all ready for them?
Yes, it would be ready. This option would be available to them. As I say, it's a voluntary opt-in for a developer. But if they had a vernal pool that was significantly impeding their ability to develop within the designated development area, they could opt into this program.
Anyone have anything else?
That's great.
Before I take the vote, I just want to let everyone know that I work with the Orno Land Trust, but I don't believe my work in this matter has raised to the level of a conflict of interest, so I will still be voting unless someone has an issue with that. All right. Then I will take a vote on Order 18167. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Great work. It was a long try, way to go, but it paid off. All right, we're going to an additional agenda item, Order 18168. Order accepting a donation of $500 from a resident for the town's beautification efforts and further authorizing the town to establish a dedicated account to hold these and future related funds. Take a motion, please.
Move approval.
Second?
All right, Sophie?
So this afternoon, we had a resident come in with a check for $500 to be used by the beautification committee for the ongoing beautification efforts. The season is pretty much over at this point. My suggestion is to, one, you have to accept it because it's a donation and it's not de minimis. Instead of putting it in plain revenue, my suggestion is that we open an asset account on the general ledger so that if it's not used by the end of this year, it would stay. My thought is that we would use the budgeted funds that we have available for beautification first, and then any donations would be added to this account so that if the committee wanted something that was beyond the budget, it could be, they would have access to it through me.
Great. That's a wonderful gesture. Does anyone have any questions, comments? You guys can.
Sorry, Tom. I'm assuming the donor has to be kept anonymous?
So the check came in, and I really couldn't receipt it until I had permission from council to accept it. We did not check with the individual. They did not say they wanted to be recognized. I would prefer not to recognize them. It can be a matter of public record if people want to go in and search through our documents, but on camera, I think I would prefer to just have permission before I acknowledge that.
I think that's fine. I'd just like to whoever this individual is just to express gratitude for a very generous donation. I think that's wonderful.
Oh, I think it's amazing.
Tom, did you have anything? No. Okay. Anyone else? No? Hearing none, I will take a vote on Order 18168. All those in favor of accepting the funds? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Moving on to committee representative report. So Sam, do you want to go before Megan? Or
Well, sure, why not? No comment. This is much more boring than hers will be. Okay, the Community Development Committee met on September 20th. We had a few issues. I was a little bit late getting there because of a work obligation, and I don't know if there's something I'm missing of this, Cindy. I know you started that, so if there's anything. I didn't miss anything. Love it. Orno Paddlers Project for Brownies Beach. There came to us requesting permission to build a smallish structure where they can keep some of their boats, especially some of their war canoes, that would be probably used for community programming with in conjunction with Parks and Rec. We looked at a number of ways of, pros and cons of this, and we are kind of moving forward with developing language for a potential lease, and they are looking at making a more firm design for what we do, but it was very unobtrusive, and it could be a wonderful asset. So we're continuing with that exploration of the next step. We also had, I don't remember, the Parks and Rec ordinance revision.
That's because we did it first.
You did it first. So I did the same thing. Okay.
Do you,
So I'm gonna pass this to Sophie.
So, we have had several questions come to us around hunting, complaints about dogs running at large on public property, just general expectations for the use of public parks, open spaces, and trails that are owned and maintained by the town. What the committee went through was a draft ordinance that sought to address those issues. It has gone for legal review, and I expect to have it back, hopefully, by the next Community Development Committee to either be passed on to council or for us to address any concerns that the attorney raises.
Perfect, thank you. And the last thing was we had an update on Parks and Rec on the number of fantastic amenities we have here in Orono.
Sorry, Sam. Didn't remember. Tom?
Finance and Operations Committee met last Wednesday. We had a number of items on our busy agenda. We discussed the allocation of interest that's earned on general fund, grant, and special revenue funds. We talked about the, the challenge of assigning interest on a monthly basis to some very small accounts, and decided that we would hold that interest for the year, make a decision on an annual basis as to how to assign it, which saved time and effort. We also discussed at great length the carry-forward funds that we approved tonight. We discussed the investment strategy that we have undertaken with our reserve funds and had an update on that. And we discussed a MMA safety grant, Maine Municipal Association safety grant to the police department, which we thought was a second application. We encouraged that to be submitted, and we had a brief town manager's report. What did I miss? Thank you. Could I just one more thing?
Sure.
As you folks may know, I serve on the Maine Municipal Association's Legislative Policy Committee. We met the Thursday of the Maine Municipal Association conference for 3 hours. Took positions on a number of upcoming issues in the legislature, and I will be reporting back to you on how that's working out at our next meeting.
Thanks, Tom. Megan, we're ready for you.
Okay. The Comp Plan Implementation Committee met on October 1st. It was a relatively compact meeting. We had an update on the Park Street Development Plan. Our town planner, Kyle Drexler, just had a brief project update. He's been kind of doing a little door-to-door on Park Street, just talking with residents and business owners informally to kind of get their take on some of the proposed ordinance revisions that we'd potentially be looking at. There's going to be a larger community meeting later this fall so that folks can actually come in and give sort of more structured feedback in the process. And the committee will then kind of consider that feedback. We also spoke about the Village Residential Overlay District. This was a priority that the committee identified that it wanted to kind of work on now that Vernal Pools is coming to a rest. And so the idea behind the Village Residential Overlay District, in brief, it appears in the comprehensive plan. It was discussed quite a bit at length about changing the way lots are zoned within walking distance of the village center, so that this was a preliminary discussion just to get an overview for what's in the comprehensive plan as a recommendation, and council gave Kyle some sort of direction for what we'd like to focus on next. We also had a brief town manager's report. The Orono Historical Society met at the beginning of the month, and that was a very brief meeting because they were very busy with getting ready for that annual sale, fundraising sale that they have that happened on October 6th. So that was, yes, and I don't think I'm forgetting anything. Nope. That's it. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you. We'll go to future agenda items and items of concern. Cheryl?
I'm still concerned about what's happening with our expiring contracts with our recycling, where our solid waste is going, the whole kerfuffle that is going on at the moment with our municipal solid waste.
Megan? Tom? Tom? Lori?
This is out of order. I forgot one acknowledgement. May I add it now? Mullion Dana, who is the ambassador from the Penobscot Nation to the Maine legislature, was a guest of the Orono Library, and she gave a talk, an informal talk at the Orono Library last Wednesday, a week ago Wednesday, as part of the library's celebration of Indigenous people, and spoke about her work since she was 15 years old, basically as an informal ambassador, formal ambassador. So I acknowledge that it was very nice of her to come to our town now that it's our first year that we officially were prepared to celebrate Indigenous Peoples' Day. That's it. And as far as the future agenda items, past future, Orono Old Town Fiber. I recall that at some point since I've been on the town council, there was discussion of having an open space for someone else to serve on that
Okay.
committee. And my neighbor is here tonight, Ezra O'Bynum, who works with fiber and broadband and computers, and I thought that he might be a good addition to that committee, so I didn't know how to bring that up, so I'm bringing it up now. And I also wanted to continue the discussion about community energy efficiency projects. I brought it up in the past, and I'm not quite sure which committee it should be reviewed by, but I did hear when I was at the Grow Smart Maine conference from Debbie Sear, who's the finance director in Bangor, and she gave her review of that program that's been going on, their energy efficiency program that's been going on for 2 years in the city of Bangor.
Great. Okay, Sophie?
If I could answer question number one. I think the thing to do would be to get contact information to Nancy. Nancy has a one-page volunteer application. And with that information and kind of a brief understanding of skill set, that comes to council, and council gets to decide who gets appointed to committees. And Nancy's been harassing me nicely to get that done, so I would assume that will be coming up at the next Community Development Committee.
Great. Sam, did you have anything?
Vote.
Okay. I had one item of concern. I would like to caution counselors to be very careful not to conduct business over email. And if we get too many people interacting over email and not, we could create a quorum and we could create some real issues on that, because it is all public, it's all accessible for public, and we should be refraining from doing anything that's not transparent. And also, we should remember that we have one town manager and she has limited time. She's trying to prioritize everything, but she will get things done as fast as she can. And I guess we'll move on to public petitions. Don't think we have any. Public comments? Susan?
I've got two comments. One, council member Flory had mentioned that there are bonds pertaining to the town that a person can invest in. No.
No, I heard a talk about a startup company in San Francisco. The head of it came to speak at this conference.
Right.
That was in Bangor
Right.
this past week. And his whole model is that right now, when a town wants to finance something and they go the route of municipal bonds, which is a way a
Right.
municipality finances
Right.
projects, the only way for someone to invest in a town is to go through a regular bank.
Yeah.
He's come up with a way that towns could float municipal bonds, but someone from your town could walk into the town office and support a project in their own town.
Oh, so that's investing in a project that occurs within a person's town as opposed to a town itself.
Right, it's for
Right.
projects, but
Yeah.
it's a way that a new startup has been able to address the fact that people can't right now.
I think like purchasing any other savings bond, is it
No,
the
it's for
equivalent of that?
municipal bonds only.
Municipal bonds only.
It's a concept that's starting out west, but it hasn't.
Well, it's international.
Yeah.
And it's a company that's been up for 6 years, but it only has 40 employees. I'm not
What's it
sure how
called
many
again,
bonds
that
they
company?
have. It's called Neighborly.
Neighborly.
But I just thought it was fascinating, so I mentioned it because
And is it like an investment that has return, or is it more of like an investment that's donation?
no, it's
to a
investment
town.
on return, and bonds are a very
Yeah.
safe investment
Yeah, I'm
because
aware.
municipalities are safe investments.
Oh.
And so I just thought it was really interesting because I'm just learning about bonds in my role.
It's kind of interesting just
counselor.
because the maturity of bonds has declined greatly compared to the 80s. It used to be at 20% return, now it's like a 0.07. The return differences. It's improving
Things are
at this
going up.
point.
And each town has its own bond rating, and our town's bond rating is good.
I mean, I think bonds are kind of like a President Trump era type, have more success. Though my other topic of concern, less serious, within the past week or so, the New York Times had a report that was an interactive map that is really incredible because it's a map of all of the structures in the United States. And I imagine Texas and Florida needs to be revised. Condolences to people of Texas and Florida. Though I had a look at the town of Orono on that map, and on that interactive map, Orono is actually divided in terms of this, the town side of the bridge was Orono, but then the university side of the town of the bridge, the university side of the bridge, the town was referred to as Webster, like Webster Park. And so I'm wondering, is that something that map makers in New York has declared, or did the town, or is that an old, did they get that from a map of like early 1900, or is that something new amongst the map makers at B? The map-making powers at B.
Maybe we can find that out at the next Historical Society meeting.
Yeah, so is Orono now kind of like Orono with the suburb of Webster?
I don't think so.
Interesting.
But interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you, Susan. Anyone else? I think.
And where the safety oranges, when people are hiking outside the town of Orono, inside of the town of Orono, it's technically illegal to discharge a firearm. Though when hiking outside of Orono, where the safety colors is, hunting season is.
Thank you, Susan.
If I can just clarify, you can discharge a firearm inside the boundaries of the town of Orono. You cannot, the east side of Stillwater is the no firearms discharge. So if you are walking on in the wilderness of outer Forest Staff, or on the west side of Stillwater, people can be hunting out there.
Good evening, Belle Ryder, Assistant Town Manager. I heard a lot of talk about the election, and I just wanted to make sure that we got all the information out there. It is indeed on November 6th this year, and we are again at the New Balance Fieldhouse on campus. We have changed the setup on the interior a little bit so that we'll be a little bit closer for voters so they don't have to walk all the way down the long hall in order to get to us. But we'll still have enough room for the new voter registration line to stretch around the track, which is what it did in 2016. We're also making accommodations for people with mobility issues who would like to vote on that day. And the Community Connector is free to ride to the polling place and back to your home all day on that on November 6th. Also, we've spoken about absentee voting. You can vote now by coming into the town office. You can request a ballot online. You can go to our website, orono.org, and look for the vote graphic link that will take you right to the election page, and there will be a spot where you can request a ballot. You can call and request a ballot, and you can come in, request the ballot, and vote it right at that time. You can do that up until November 1st. And then after that time, if circumstances prevent you from coming to the polling place on November 6th, and they are unexpected, so for example, you have fallen ill and you can't get to the polling place, you have been called out of town for that, and it was not something that was previously scheduled, anything that you could not have predicted on November 1st, you may vote by special circumstance. And in order to do that, you sign an oath saying that this is indeed a special circumstance, and that's why you are voting absentee at this time. Voter registration can take place anytime between now and the day of the election. If you are voting, you do either need to have your proof of identity and proof of residency. So oftentimes people will use some sort of a picture ID, government issued picture ID, and a piece of mail. If you do not have either of those, you may swear an oath that you are who you say you are. And still register to vote. But I highly encourage you, because the process is much smoother, to have the information available. And of course, you can come into the town office between now and then to register, and then also to vote. Any other questions? Did I miss anything?
I don't think so.
Belle, this particular election, we're going to have ranked choice voting, and the gubernatorial will not be ranked choice.
So there is ranked choice voting for the federal elections, and the state elections are not ranked choice voting because of the state constitution.
Okay.
And there are sample ballots here at the town office and also online.
Belle, can you just talk a little bit about the prohibition on promoting a, you know what I'm...
So as of right now, the town office is a polling location, and for 250 feet around a polling location, there is a prohibition against promoting a political party or agenda or candidate. We have spoken to our employees and reminded them of the fact that this is indeed a polling place and that it needs to be politically neutral, and would encourage everybody to realize that the town hall right now is indeed a polling place. And 250 feet reaches all the way out to pretty much the end of the municipal parking lot here, out to the playground.
And I had one more question. Does that include bumper stickers?
It would technically include bumper stickers. I don't think that anybody has ever complained about a bumper sticker on a vehicle that is kind of transitory. So if you come to visit the town office and you have a bumper sticker, we're not going to boot you from the parking lot.
There have been complaints lodged, though, about against towns that have staff that are parked there all day long with bumper stickers. So we've asked folks to please refrain.
Bell, that same prohibition will apply to the polling place on Election Day, I assume.
That is correct. It will indeed.
Hi, my name is Max Dorman. I'm currently a student at the University of Maine. I focus on environmental issues with my career. Are you guys familiar with the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative? Cool. All right. So places like Bangor get funding for it for things like Greater Bangor Solar Res and stuff like that. So what I'm really interested in is how places like Orono can sort of move forward, I guess, into the kinds of systems that are being reconstituted in the 21st century, quite frankly, when it comes to technological innovation and communication structures and stuff like that. That's what I do research on. So I specifically focus on policy, carbon policy, and I'm working on getting some new stuff going on at a lot of different scales as far as implementation goes. With the current administration, quite frankly, at the federal level, you can't do much in terms of getting a policy across for the entire country. But what you can do is do regional policies, like the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. So that's what I do. I'm going to keep doing it, and I would love to talk more to the town council and anybody who's interested about how we can get those things out there publicly in ways that just, you know, do you guys know about the International Governmental Panel, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC? They just released a new report while I was at a conference in DC, and everybody was all up in arms about it because it targeted 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming instead of 2. And the fact that that happened on an international level, it's very hard to get economists and scientists to agree on anything. So what I am trying to impress upon you guys right now, I guess, is the international importance of this issue for every single, you know, coastal city and rural community. And, you know, Orono's on that list too. So as far as like benefits goes for dealing with things like this, they're tangible and immediate. And I'm very interested in just figuring out what Orono specifically can do as a local municipality to, you know, stand up and do their bit for climate change. So there are a lot of ways that can happen, and I'd love to talk more about it with anybody.
Thank you so much for that. And there's a Maine nonprofit called the Acadia Center.
Oh yeah, I did research on their
recently
work
put out a report that talks about what municipalities can do, and it's wonderful to have a citizen of Orono that's interested in that. And our job here is to take what our citizens want us to do and review it and find out how we might be able to make Orono work better and achieve goals that we have as a town, municipality, for our citizens. But it's to take it from what the Acadia Center has proposed to see what we could do in Orono is probably something that would be great if a group of citizens could assist us with that.
Yeah.
So if you're that interested and you're connected with people at the university, it'd be wonderful, and you're welcome to call me, and we can talk about how we might review what the Acadia Center said and see what might be something we would propose for Orno?
Yeah, basically, I mean, my proposal would just be to have public meetings on the 2020 program review for the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. My research was on the 2016 program review. So all I'm trying to say is that the more that people talk about these things, the better for the national and international policy landscape that is climate adaptation and climate mitigation policy. So it's very real regardless of whether or not our country wants to deal with it, I guess, at a federal level. So yeah, I would really appreciate having those discussions, and I do have a lot of very tangible ideas. So that would be great to pursue those further.
Great, thank you very much, Mike.
Stuart Dexter, 3 Fernwood Street. You know, if you see me, I'm going to come up here for some reason. But anyway, this regards a forum that the town had regarding the property between Mainwood and Gilbert. And the questions I had should have been brought up at that time, but unfortunately, I only heard 40% of the conversation because of manufacturer's problem or something. Anyway, one question that I do have, as I've been thinking, someone brought this up. One person somewhere brought up having a forum regarding what this land should be done. And I'd like to know who that person was. I don't know if it's good to ask the question. I'm sure I won't get an answer tonight. But it had to be someone from the town, had to be someone from committee, had to be someone from the neighborhood, must have been an economic, a developer from outside of Orono. It might have been a government agency that said, you've got this land, you've got to do something with it. So my feeling is, I was just wondering who started that. So.
Let me try to give you an answer. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I just need one person's name. No, go ahead.
If it were only that easy, right?
Right.
For the last several years, Jeff Gordon had really pushed for us to evaluate all town property. So this started as part of that, evaluating all town property. Then, when we adopted the comprehensive plan, there were some very specific suggestions, and one of those suggestions was playground in kind of up by the Webster side and a playground kind of down near Page Place, Sailor. So as those ideas began to swirl, and there has been discussion on council about affordable housing initiatives, and talked about where Black Bear Heights was. So as all of those discussions swirled, the Sailor land came up a few times. And what became very apparent was that there had not been, in recent times, a conversation with the neighborhood. And what the message I got loud and clear from council was that it did not want to make even proposals without first having conversation with the neighborhood. For example, does the neighborhood really want a playground? Does the neighborhood really want some additional development? Does the neighborhood really want us to just leave it the way it is? And so there isn't like some outside developer who wants to develop the land, and so we're trying to walk down a path. I think the issue that we're facing is there's 15 acres of land that the town owns, doesn't have any kind of plan for, and the direction that was given to staff before even this council sat, would be the last council, was to return all land that we could to the tax rolls and not just be a holder of land without a purpose. So what we might find when we get to the end of this, Stuart, is that the purpose is that that should be recreational space and we should just leave it. We might find that we want to have a playground. I would I'm not sure we'll find that the neighborhood wants development, because that is not the message I got at the meeting. But I think those were all ideas, and what council didn't want to do was come up with a laundry list of options without getting some real understanding from the neighborhood about how it's used, and also what the desires are, because that is a wonderful neighborhood, residential neighborhood, and just what would attract families to Orono. The last thing I think council wants to do is create upheaval there. Have I answered your question?
Yes, I think it does. And I don't know what the council will be deciding or whatever, but we went through this 45 years ago. And I had some great ideas. And like usually anytime I have an idea, it gets shot down. Well, it got shot down fast. The neighborhood wanted to leave it as it was. They didn't want the playground, they didn't want a swimming pool, they didn't want a Little League field, or they didn't want anything. Leave it as it is, we like it this way. Mow it 3 or 4 times during the summer and they'll be happy. Now that's 45 years ago. I know whatever goes in there, if something goes in there, and it could be as I told one of my neighbors, I understood it was going to be a 4-story dormitory for university. And they, it's a wonder he didn't come down, and I had to hold him back. I said, I'm kidding. But you never know what's going to happen. And during that meeting we had, there was a mention of, and they didn't get into anything to put in there, but there was a mention similar to what you said, maybe some housing. Could put 20 new houses in that area without any big problem, other than your streets wouldn't be very good, and I don't think neighbors would. Anyway, you've answered my question. I said somebody has got to been the prime pusher of this, or to bring it up in discussion. And on the subject, I think if they are going to go forward with any more discussions, I think there should be a survey of the neighbors in that area. Now, there was maybe 15 or 20 people at this meeting we had, and they did ask if anybody wanted to be on another committee, I think, and 6 or 7 people put their hands up. Whether they lived in the neighborhood or not, I don't know. And you don't know, they might have been the ones that wanted to build a dormitory for the university. But I think, I don't know, there's 60 to 70 houses in that area. And I think they should all be questioned as to what they would like to have in their area. And as I say, I'm not going to be around long enough, so if they ever go to build a dormitory there, by the time they get it done, I won't be around. So that takes care of that. That council should, whatever they do, should make sure that it's the neighborhood that they get the answers from, and not people over on Park Street or somewhere. That takes care of that problem. The other one, I have an announcement that will excite everybody, but at your next meeting, I'll have my 3rd annual 25 top communities tax rates. So I'm sure you won't want to miss getting that information. That's all I have. Thank you.
If I could, Stuart, if I could just answer the question that got put out there, even if it wasn't really a question, and that is kind of the next steps and what's going on. So I don't know if you could hear when people introduced themselves around the room at that meeting. I think there was one community member that wasn't from the Sailor neighborhood, another one that lived in the Sailor neighborhood for 30 years and has moved over to Page Place. So I saw 2 people outside of staff that was at the back of the room. So the people that are on that committee, because I don't think Adam put his name in for that committee. Oh, you did? Okay. So there's one person, I think, outside the neighborhood. The goal is that staff would be working with that committee to refine some options, to understand the constraints and the use of the neighborhood as it exists currently. When those options get refined and go to council, councilors would then have some say in, maybe there's an option on there that they don't think is an option. But I think it's a great idea to then turn around those options and maybe ask the community to rank them on a lighter scale. Just wanted to let you know that it's not like anything is gonna immediately happen, and the whole intent is to get feedback from the neighborhood so that we can go back to the neighborhood.
As I say, I probably won't be living in the neighborhood when that comes. There was one person there that passed on giving their name. That was me, because I didn't know what people were supposed to do. So I knew I'd get in trouble if I said something, but, so I was the one that passed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. All right, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Right, all those in favor? We are adjourned. See you November 19th.
So, counselors, if you could put December 17th on your calendars, it's a community development meeting, but we've got two businesses coming in, and I think it would be very productive and a good use of everybody's time if we could have all counselors that would be there. It is already on the calendar. Community development committee meeting, but it's a special. Yes.